John was 32 years old and had built a life that, from the outside, seemed complete. He had a successful career, a comfortable apartment in the heart of the city, and a close-knit group of friends. Yet, despite all this, an undeniable emptiness lingered within him. He longed for someone to share his life with, to fall deeply in love, get married, and maybe even start a family. True love had always seemed just out of reach, a distant dream he couldn't quite grasp. On one particularly stormy evening, the rain fell in heavy sheets, turning the city streets into a blur of lights and shadows. John hurried through the downpour, his umbrella offering little protection against the relentless weather. Seeking refuge, he ducked into a small, cozy café he had never noticed before, its warm lights and inviting aroma promising shelter from the storm. The café was nearly empty, except for an enigmatic woman sitting alone by the window, her silhouette illuminated by the soft glow of a vintage lamp. She had long, dark hair that cascaded over her shoulders and wore a simple, elegant dress. There was something timeless about her, a quiet grace that immediately drew John's attention. As he ordered a coffee and settled into a nearby seat, their eyes met. She offered a gentle smile, and before he knew it, he found himself walking over, compelled by an unseen force. "Mind if I join you?" John asked, his voice betraying a hint of nervousness. "Not at all," she replied, her voice smooth and melodic. "Company is always welcome on a night like this." She introduced herself as Evelyn, and from that moment, conversation flowed effortlessly between them. They spoke of art, music, and the city's rich history. Evelyn's knowledge of the past was astonishing. She described grand theaters and elegant dance halls as if she had visited them herself. Her stories were vivid, painted with such detail that John could almost see the scenes unfolding before him. As the hours passed, John found himself completely enthralled. Evelyn had a way of making the world around them fade away, leaving just the two of them in a bubble of shared connection. He laughed more than he had in ages, and felt a warmth spreading through him that chased away the loneliness he'd been carrying for so long. Yet there were peculiarities he couldn't quite ignore. When he asked for her phone number to stay in touch, Evelyn smiled softly and said, "How about we meet here again tomorrow? Same time, same place. I prefer things a bit more personal." John hesitated for a moment, but found himself agreeing eagerly. There was something charmingly old-fashioned about her suggestion, and he was already looking forward to seeing her again. Throughout the evening, Evelyn avoided any mention of modern life. She had no social media, no phone, and spoke wistfully of events and places that had long since changed or disappeared. John chalked it up to a penchant for nostalgia, finding it endearing rather than odd. Eventually, the cafe's owner began closing up, signaling that it was time to part ways. Outside, the storm had subsided into a gentle drizzle, the streets glistening under the streetlights. "I had a wonderful time tonight," John said, his eyes never leaving hers. "As did I," Evelyn replied, her smile enigmatic. "Until tomorrow, then."
Goodbye.
She turned and walked gracefully into the night, disappearing around the corner before John could say another word. He stood there for a moment, a strange feeling of longing washing over him, before finally making his way home, his heart lighter than it had been in years. The next day, anticipation bubbled within him as evening approached. He arrived at the cafe early, his eyes scanning every corner for a glimpse of Evelyn. To his surprise, the cafe was empty except for the elderly owner behind the counter, who was wiping down tables with a contemplative expression. John took a seat by the window, the same one where he and Evelyn had spent hours talking the night before. Minutes turned into an hour, and worry began to creep into his thoughts. After a while, the cafe owner approached him, a sympathetic look in his eyes. "Waiting for someone?" he asked gently. "Yes," John replied, trying to mask his disappointment. "I was supposed to meet someone here." "Her name is Evelyn." The old man's eyes softened further, and he let out a slow, measured sigh. "Son, Evelyn hasn't been here in a very long time." Confusion knitted John's brow. "What do you mean? We were here together last night, talking for hours." The owner nodded slowly, his gaze steady. "Evelyn was a regular here, back in the day. Loved this place dearly. She was 30 years old when she died in a car accident, right outside this very cafe, about 50 years ago." A cold chill ran down John's spine, his mind racing to make sense of what he was hearing. "That can't be. I was with her last night. We talked, laughed, she was real." The old man placed a comforting hand on John's shoulder. "Last night I saw you sitting right there, talking and smiling as if you were having the time of your life. But son, you were alone. I didn't have the heart to interrupt. You looked so happy, and I figured maybe, just maybe, you were talking to Evelyn. You're not the first, you know. Sometimes people come in here and feel her presence. Some say she never left." John's thoughts flashed back to the previous night, the way Evelyn's eyes seemed to hold centuries of stories, her reluctance to share contact information, her detailed accounts of places and events from decades past. The realization hit him like a tidal wave, leaving him breathless and disoriented. "But she felt so real," he whispered, his voice trembling. "I felt such a connection, like I've never felt before." The cafe owner gave him a sad, understanding smile. "Love has a way of crossing boundaries we don't fully understand. Perhaps she was drawn to you because she saw the longing in your heart, the desire for connection. Maybe in some way, you gave each other something you both needed." John sat there in stunned silence, the weight of the revelation pressing down on him. The warmth and joy he had felt were now tinged with a profound sadness and a sense of loss for something that never truly was. As he rose to leave, the owner called out softly, "Take care of yourself, son, and remember, some connections, no matter how brief or mysterious, can leave lasting impressions on our hearts." Still trying to process the shock of what he'd just learned, as he walked away, confused and rattled by how real Evelyn had seemed, he couldn't help but wonder if he'd ever find a woman like her, someone who could touch his heart in such a profound way. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to the channel. See you on the next Sir Fable's Tale.